Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to Thursday's second half kickoff edition of WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion that is posted on Tuesdays and Thursdays on WeAreSC.com and features WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and historians. As always, we start off with the pregame show where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, then give you the latest USC football news. Let's meet Thursday's panelists. A WeAreSC columnist who writes WeAreSC.com's The Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways. In addition to regular season football and basketball practice reports, he also hosts his own podcast show entitled Locked On USC, Marc Kulkin. A former William Jewell College defensive back and WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular WeAreSC.com column Musings with Arledge, and now has his own weekly WeAreSC.com video show, Musings with Arledge, and is a graduate of the USC Law School, Chris Arledge. Excuse me. The chairman and CEO of WeAreSC.com, a USC graduate and former Department of Justice supervisor and trial lawyer and general counselor for two large companies, Bruce Bagni, a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes Fridays, The Obvious Not So Obvious, IMHO Sunday, and is an active member of the Football Writers Association of America, your moderator and producer of Inside the Trojans Huddle, Greg Katz. Before we kick off Thursday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here's some brief USC football news heading into this weekend. The 10th ranked Trojans are in Dallas now, preparing for Monday's 87th Cotton Bowl Classic against the number 15th ranked Tulane Green Wave in AT&T Stadium, which is located in Arlington, Texas. Kickoff time for Monday's Cotton Bowl Classic will be noon Central Time, and for those of you staying on the West Coast, you can watch the game on ESPN, televising the game, our time, 10 a.m. in the Pacific region. The odds makers front, here's where we are now. The Trojans are 2.5-point favorites to defeat Tulane in the Cotton Bowl. More on the Cotton Bowl here in the opening of the third quarter of Inside the Trojans Huddle. And as a courtesy reminder, for those of you that are not currently a subscriber member of WeAreSC.com, right now for $10, you can access all the WeAreSC premium stories, analysis, and videos. The current new member deal gives you complete coverage throughout this season, the bowl game, recruiting, spring football, all the way up to next season's WeAreSC.com cycle, which ends on August 31st. 2023, and we're almost there. So with that, panel, it's time to kick off the second half with a preview of the Cotton Bowl and the mighty Tulane Green Wave. Both USC and Tulane come into the Cotton Bowl with identical 11-2 records. Among the 11 wins, the Green Wave have beaten number 9 Kansas State 17-10 in Manhattan, Kansas. Tulane is led by junior quarterback Michael Pratt from Boca Raton, Florida, who has thrown for 2,776 yards, 25 touchdowns with 5 interceptions. However, the key player for Tulane may be junior running back Tyjae Spears from Ponchatoula, Louisiana, who has run for 1,376 yards, 15 touchdowns, and averages 6.5 yards per carry. Spears was the Athletic Conference 2022 Offensive Player of the Year, and he has rushed for at least 100 yards in each of his past 7 games. To make matters more challenging for the Trojans' beleaguered defense is that Tyjae Spears ranks 11th in the FBS in evaded tackles with 141, while the USC defense ranks 12th in most tackles missed in the FBS with 141. Tulane will also feature 2 all-conference first-team offensive line selections in guard Prince Pines, 6'5", 345 from Baton Rouge, and center Sincere Hainsworth, 6'1", 300 from Pearland, Texas. The weak spot for the 7th-year head coach of Tulane, Willie Fritz's team, is his defense, something the Trojans head coach Lincoln Riley can relate. The Green Wave defense is led by senior all-conference first-team selection linebacker Dorian Williams, 6'2", 230, and safety Macon Clark, 6'1", 205 from St. Rose, Louisiana. All right, panel, here we go. If Caleb Williams is the starting quarterback in the Cotton Bowl, how effective will the Trojans' offensive be in spite of another reconstructive offensive line? As always, we start off with Marc Kulkin. What are we looking at here, Marc?
is Caleb healthy? I mean, that's I think the underlying issue here, right? We know USC's offensive line is going to be reshuffled. Who's playing where, we'll find out in a week. But again, if Caleb's playing the game, he better be able to do what Caleb Williams has done all season long, and that's escape pressure. So while Tulane's defense doesn't necessarily have a big, number sack-wise, they do get to the quarterback. I think I saw a number where they touched the quarterback or made contact over 200 times throughout the season. So they can create pressure. That's the issue for me, as far as will USC's offense be effective? How healthy is Caleb? If he's not healthy, don't play him. That, we've talked about this on previous shows. This is the opportunity for Miller Moss and the offensive line to work together, figure it out, rely on the running game, even without a Travis Dye, and show Tulane something they haven't, that's not on film.
All right, Chris, what do you think?
Well, Mark has it right. The question is whether Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams. If he is, USC's offense doesn't have anything to worry about. They're going to score plenty. If he's not healthy or if he doesn't play, I don't know. I mean, at least the offensive line has had some time to work together in this reconfigured unit, and maybe we'll see a better effort than what we saw against Utah. Tulane's not as good defensively as Utah, so they probably play better anyway. But I mean, the last we saw of that offensive line was ugly. So I'd like to think that USC will be able to move the ball on Tulane no matter who plays quarterback, but I don't know if that's true. I do know if Caleb Williams is still Caleb Williams, they're not going to have any trouble moving the ball on anybody. Doesn't matter.
Bruce, your thoughts?
I certainly agree with what Chris just said. He may be slightly less effective. In that respect, I'm concerned about sacks because I think Caleb does have a tendency to hold the ball too long. And if that's the case, and if he's not as mobile as he normally is, I mean, he will be sacked. So, but if Caleb is Caleb, that should be no problem. We ought to do very, very well. We ought to score 45 or more points.
Wow.
Absolutely.
All
Even with the restructured offensive line.
It really is it's a two-part problem. Caleb, how effective and how effective the offensive line is. If neither is working to at least near capacity and functioning, it could be a struggle to see what happens. I'm hoping that Caleb can play, but one never knows. Now, if he can't play, Miller Moss is the starting quarterback in the Cotton Bowl. How effective will the Trojans offense be in spite of another reconstructive offensive line if Miller Moss is the quarterback? How do you feel about that, Mark?
I don't know if they'll score 45 points, but you guys have touched on it. Tulane's defense isn't great. USC should still have enough offensive firepower to beat Tulane. If it's not 45 points, 37 points, somewhere in there. Again, there's a reason why players were recruited to go to USC, and there's a reason why players are at Tulane. There should be a big enough gap between the programs that even with all the issues that USC is dealing with offensively, players missing, unavailable, injured, whatever, they should still be able to beat a team named Tulane.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, look, if Caleb Williams can't play, USC is going to have to run the ball effectively. And they didn't do that against Utah. But for the most part this year, they've been able to run it. So I expect that Tulane is going to put a bunch of people in the box regardless. They're going to do it if Caleb Williams is playing because they don't know if he can move yet. They're going to do it if Miller Moss is playing because they're going to make Miller beat him. So I think they're going to put a lot of people in the box to make it more difficult to run. Look, USC should, as Mark pointed out, USC should be able to move the ball against Tulane, even with a backup quarterback in there. Although, let's not forget that a big part of bowl games has to do with motivation. This game means a whole lot more to Tulane than it does to USC. It's a major challenge, I think, for Lincoln Riley to get his guys excited to play this game against an opponent that they probably don't respect and in a game that they don't want to be playing in. USC wanted to be in the playoff, and it's a major disappointment they're not there. So you're talking about a team that is as excited as they can be to be playing in a big bowl game against USC, against another team that we'll see what their motivation is. I don't know. But if USC is not excited to be there and Tulane is, that can overcome that talent gap that Mark just talked about, because you see it all the time in college football, especially in bowl games. So that's actually what I'm worried about more than anything else. I want to see whether USC actually cares about this football game. I don't think we know that yet.
Bruce, your thoughts?
Those are great points. Look, if Miller Moss plays, we might be okay. There are going to be more short passes. Hopefully he'll get rid of the ball quicker. Hopefully we'll have a running game that works. Maybe we won't score as many points. Maybe we'll kick more field goals, but I still think we could win the game. Now the defense is always a question mark, but the defense might get a turnover or two, which has been our trademark this year. But I'm not that negative about the outcome of Miller Moss plays, bottom line.
Yeah, I think that Miller Moss, there's plenty of time now for Lincoln Riley to adjust to Miller Moss. It's really about that offensive line being restructured. So, in some ways, maybe the passing game will be a very quick passing game, but I don't think he's the problem. I think the defense is really the big question, how much they support the Trojan offense and giving them a chance to score enough points. What do you expect to see, panel, from the Trojans offense, regardless of quarterback, that you didn't see against Utah? Mark?
Maybe some more tight end involvement. And, bowl games, you always see some trick plays. So, maybe some razzle dazzle.
Chris?
I think we're going to see a real commitment to the running game and
Yeah,
Lincoln Riley likes to run the football. He ran the ball better actually at Oklahoma than he did this year, probably because he had Caleb Williams. But I think we're going to see a real commitment to the running game. I don't think he wants to be in a position where he has to rely on a backup quarterback to win a shootout for him. So I think that's what we're going to see, and hopefully it'll be successful.
Bruce?
I think more power running. We've done when we've done it, we've looked very good running between the guards or the tackles. Like you used to say, Greg, 23 blast. I think that's a reality here. And I think the short passing game. So that's kind of what I think they'll focus on, that. And hopefully they'll focus on tackling people, which would be a good thing.
Yeah, that would be a big help. So let's transition from that. What do you expect from the USC defense that you didn't see against Utah in the Pac-12 championship game? Mark, what are we going to
Just 3 words: a better effort.
A better effort. How do you feel about that, Chris? Is it about the effort?
I think it is about the effort. I think that, and I think a renewed focus on tackling, because the tackling both times against Utah, the tackling was terrible. And I think USC has gotten into an ugly habit defensively of relying so much on turnovers that what they want to do is strip the football instead of knocking a guy out, wrapping up, keep the legs pumping and drive through him. You don't see that nearly as much as you see guys hugging and trying to strip the ball and missing tackles. The tackling has to be better. The tackling against Utah in the second half of that last game was embarrassing. That was embarrassing. Every player in that USC defense should be embarrassed by what they did. It was awful. They can play better than that. USC doesn't have great defensive talent, but they're better than that. And I hope those guys show up and actually play with some guts, because they're going to need it. Tulane's offense is not bad.
No, they're not bad. And the point is I don't think a leopard changes its spots. I don't think the tiger doesn't change its stripes, and I don't think USC is going to be a whole lot different, although you can make a difference, obviously, as Mark pointed out. It's about effort. They completely threw the towel in when it was apparent that Caleb Williams wasn't himself on offense. If anything, they should have elevated their game because they knew more was expected of them, but that didn't happen. So hopefully the effort will be there, because if they don't have an effort, they're not going to win this game. You got to play the game, not the name. They can't sit there and say we're playing Tulane. Play the game. Don't pay attention to who you're playing. And I hope that is something that they will take in mind. So with that, we are going to move on here to the official lighting of the between third and fourth quarter of the WeAreSC Coliseum torch. We've ignited it, which means we will transition to our Big 10 lightning round, 10 rapid fire questions, 10 rapid fire answers. So panel, here we go. Question 1, yes or no, the unavailability for the Trojans of All-America offensive guard Andrew Vorhees is a bigger loss than the unavailability of All Pac-12 receiver Jordan Addison at wide receiver. Yes or no, Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes, with especially combined with the loss of Nealon.
And I agree. It's a foursome unanimous. Question 2, yes or no? There will be a bigger turnout of Tulane fans and USC fans at the Cotton Bowl. Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Oh, yes.
Bruce?
Yes, because it means more to them, and also the physical proximity.
I agree. Another unanimous decision. Question 3, yes or no? If Caleb Williams plays against Tulane, he will throw for at least 3 touchdowns and 300 yards passing. Chris?
If he's healthy, without question. If he
Okay.
plays and he's gimpy, I don't know.
Mark?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes, with the same caveat that Chris gave.
And I agree. Question 4, yes or no? If Miller Moss plays against Tulane, he will throw for at least 3 touchdowns and 300 yards passing. Chris?
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
Mark?
Yes.
Bruce?
Maybe.
There isn't a maybe. It's yes or no. You can't be a little bit pregnant.
Maybe. I'll say tending toward yes.
All right, I will say no. Question 5, yes or no? Tulane will score at least 30 points against the Trojans defense. Chris?
Unless they've made big improvements, the 4 of us could score 30 points against the USC.
That's right. Yeah.
So yes.
All right, Mark?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes, probably.
And I say yes. Question 6, yes or no? In the Cotton Bowl, the Trojans will have at least 150 yards rushing against the Tulane defense. Yes or no, Chris?
Yeah, I think a lot more.
Mark?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes, 250 or more.
I think they'll have 150 yards rushing, but it may be a little bit of a tight squeeze there. Question 7, yes or no? Place kicker Dennis Lynch for USC will kick at least 2 field goals in the Cotton Bowl. Chris?
I hope not. I hate field goals.
Okay, so you're saying yes or no?
I'm saying no. It's all touchdowns here, Greg.
Okay, Mark?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes, if Moss is the quarterback.
All right, and I say yes, that he will kick at least 2 field goals. Question 8, yes or no? The Trojans will punt at least 3 times in the Cotton Bowl. Chris?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Bruce?
No.
I say yes. Question 9, yes or no? The Trojans will have less than 50 yards of penalties in the Cotton Bowl. Chris?
No.
Mark?
No.
Bruce?
No.
And I say no. Final question, yes or no? The leading receiver in the Cotton Bowl for the Trojans will be Taj Washington. Yes or no, Chris?
No, Mario Williams.
Mark,
No,
Bruce,
I say no, probably Mario Williams, Kyle Ford, or Michael Jackson.
okay, I will say yes, he will be the leading receiver. All right, fourth quarter, here we go. Panel, how important is it to win in the Cotton Bowl for the Trojans? Bruce?
I think it's very important to keep the momentum going, to stay in the national spotlight. So, yeah, I think it's important.
Chris?
It's not that important. They shouldn't get embarrassed in that game, but a loss, especially if Caleb Williams isn't healthy, isn't devastating.
Mark?
it's important if you're looking at it from the perspective of you want to maintain positive momentum going into the spring and hopefully opening the eyes for some more guys to transfer in. Other than that, it's a meaningless game in the big picture.
My opinion of it is I think it's a big, important win. You want to finish with a 12-win season. It sounds good continuing in the recruiting world of propaganda. I think you want to have that going into spring ball. And I don't think you want people from January 2nd all the way through to September talking about, oh yeah, we lost that last bowl game, we suck. We have a 2-game losing streak now. There's too many negatives. The program needs to continue with a lot of positive things. All right, panel, what will be the negative effects if the Trojans lose in the Cotton Bowl? I think I just kind of went over that for myself. So Bruce, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the same thing. Yeah, it may affect the rest of the high school and portal recruiting. It could have a negative effect from this. Look, it's damn Tulane, for God's sakes. We can't lose to Tulane. It's
Play the
just not
game.
good image-wise. Sorry.
That's all right. Play the game, not the name. Chris?
Well, we can lose to Tulane. And if Caleb Williams isn't healthy, there's a reasonable chance that'll happen. Look, USC was the talk of the college football world for a lot of the season. It was a huge turnaround. They have the best player in football, the hot young coach. And so they do lose a little bit of that in the offseason if they lose this game, and that would be unfortunate. I still think, though, that regardless of what happens in this game, USC starts the season as a top 5 team with the best player in the country and a lot of excitement. So I don't think losing this game is devastating to the program, but it doesn't help.
Mark, thoughts?
Yeah, like I said, you don't want to end the season on a 2-game losing streak, but when you put everything together, you understand, where USC is deficient, especially on defense. We talked about it. We don't anticipate them getting much better between now and the game time. So Tulane is better than Memphis. They're better than Appalachian State as far as, the totem pole of life. Michigan's lost to Appalachian State at home. USC lost to Memphis at home at one point in their history. Losing to Tulane doesn't look good, but again, it's the Cotton Bowl. It's on New Year's Day or the day after New Year's, but because of the way people look at college football now, the playoffs are what matters. And in 2 years, when it's a 12-team playoff, the Cotton Bowl is going to matter even less than the Rose Bowl is going to matter, because unless you're part of that, that structure where you're playing in the Cotton Bowl or the Rose Bowl in the semifinals or however they're going to be utilizing those bowl games, it doesn't matter anymore.
All right. Well, I've said my piece on it, so we'll just move on here. Panel, what positive do you absolutely expect to see either on or off the field against Tulane? And what negatives do you absolutely expect to see on or off the field against the Tulane Green Wave? Bruce?
I expect to see some explosive plays from Raleigh Brown. I think they're going to use him correctly and get him out in space. The negative will be the tackling. Hard tackling.
Chris?
Lincoln Riley has a month to scheme against a questionable defense. We're going to see USC's great athletes in space making plays. The negative, I could go with bad tackling because I agree with that one, but I'm going to say instead questionable secondary play, because the last half of the season, every quarterback that USC plays against looks like Johnny Unitas.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah.
And we're hoping that everyone knows who Johnny Unitas is, of course. Okay. Mark?
Yeah, it's the bowl game. Chris just touched on. I think you're going to see Lincoln Riley want to have some fun on offense. And it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback, if it's Caleb or Miller. When you got players like Rayleigh Brown and you have players in your wide receiver room, go out there and have some fun. Hopefully, that's what they're using their time to do. There's not a whole. They're not going to get better with their bowl preparation. This is a time for the younger players to kind of show their wares and to make their case for next year. And the negative is it's going to be on the defense. Just tackle. There's really nothing else to say.
All right. Well, I'll finish this segment up by saying I expect to see some creativity from Lincoln Riley. I'm hopeful that they will positively play the game and not concern themselves with the name. They might get a wake-up call when the crowd starts vocalizing their who they're rooting for. The negativity that I expect to see, the same thing I've always seen on defense. If they don't get the turnovers, Spears, the running back, is going to start looking like a Heisman Trophy winner, and that could be detrimental to the final score on it. So hopefully the positives will be the positives and the negatives will be swept under the rug, and we'll see what happens. So let's go to overtime. Panel, in bowl games, there is always a surprise player on offense and a player on defense that has an effect on the game. Who are the two USC players, one on offense, one on defense, who will be the surprise players on Monday? Mark?
I'm just going to pull a couple of names out of the hat just because I have no idea. How about Jude Wolf at tight end? Will he be healthy? Yeah, maybe he'll be healthy to play in the bowl game.
Cool. All right.
I know they were hoping to have him healthy towards the end of the year. So maybe Jude makes a play on some at tight end. Defensively, maybe Solo can go out with a bang.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, that would be a good one. Bruce, who's it going to be? Who's the surprise?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking Kyle Ford and/or Michael Williams. I keep saying Michael Williams. Yeah, Michael. Is it Michael Williams?
Michael Jackson III.
Michael Jackson. I keep wanting to say Michael Williams. Michael Jackson. I think that guy is a great talent. Kyle Ford. I think something will happen there. D-Ditch at center, I think, will make a statement. And on defense, Gentry.
Okay. There we go. So, Chris?
I think Nick Figueroa is going to have a big day defensively. I can see him getting some tackles for loss and a sack or two. Offensively, I'm going to go Rayleigh Brown. I think he's been improving as the year has gone on. He's explosive. And I think Lincoln Riley's had a few weeks to figure out a way to get him in space with the football. So I'm going Rayleigh.
Man, I need to figure out the definition of surprise and obvious, because you guys are choosing the obvious and I'm going with surprises. Whatever.
Well, hopefully I can surprise you then. I'm going to go with Michael Jackson III.
Yes.
I think he's really good. And I think every time he gets his hands on the ball, really good things happen. So I'm going to take a stab in the dark here and say it'll be Michael MJ on offense. Defensively, I kind of like Solo, but there's always that one player that's going to surprise And I guess that well, you know what, I'm gonna stick with Solo. What the heck? I mean, you know what? Why not him? Nick Figueroa would be another one that I would say would, you know, he's a academic All-American, so maybe he will play like an athletic All-American and we'll have it. So, all right, guys. It's only days before kickoff. Chris, you're gonna be there. Marc Kulkin's gonna be there. Bruce Bagni is gonna be there. I'll be manning the studios back at WeAreSC. So we can get some stuff up on the board in a hurry. So that'll do it for Thursday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. And so until next Tuesday, that's what we're hoping to get on with everybody in Dallas. A big thank you to our panelists, Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, and Bruce Bagni, and a special thank you to all of you for watching and listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Have yourself a great New Year's weekend. Go Trojans. Until next week, this is your moderator, Greg Katz, saying Happy New Year, everybody. Beat Tulane and fight on.